Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co host, Keith Bogan,
Hello.
Bobby Hammondike,
I'm here.
and the returning from the middle of nowhere, the middle of everything, the middle of staying away from America and everything that's been going on, the returning Chad Holloway. So all I can say right now to begin things is we are now on the other side of the elections. And as a group, we have basically decided that there is no reason to essentially beat a dead horse. The elections are over. Whatever the result, we don't know 100% what the result is. We have ideas, we have projections. Whatever the result is, it's time to move on. It's time to start looking towards what the future may hold and hope for better things. As a whole, we are four grown men of very different backgrounds, very different belief systems, religions, everything. What I will say is we are four intelligent men, usually intelligent men, who, while opinionated, understand that people have opinions. We may take our shots at each other and joke about each other's opinions. But what I can say is we work together as a unit very well. And I believe we will continue to do so in the future, whatever the future may hold. So we are going to try to move on with a topic that I'm not exactly sure any of us really know too much about, but it's come up in an interesting idea of talking about teaching our children skill sets, teaching them how to do things around the house, with their cars, with other things in life, and trying to build a good system for them and a good foundation for them to build their futures upon. And I'm getting two blank stares and one guy who's not even looking at the camera. So this is going to be a very fun hour, apparently.
Yeah.
I'll just throw it out on the floor, on the table, and whoever wants to start us off,
I'll
go
go
right
ahead. I'll go ahead and start. I'll
I'm
take
right behind him.
because I think this is a very important topic. And when I look back at my childhood and kind of what has led me to where I am, I look at my stepdad, and when I, as a father, and I look back at how my stepdad and my father taught me how to do things, I try to figure out how I'm going to teach my son to do the same things. And it's almost like especially my stepdad had a playbook he was going by, because everything that I've learned I can tie back to him in some way, right? So whether it's how electricity works, whether it's changing out something in the plumbing, whether it's my way of approaching something, it's different things that he has taught me, and I've tried to teach my son the same things, right? But I have not been as successful as my stepfather was. And these things can range from things directly like balancing your checkbook. I mean, because for me, one of the key things that I want to create a young man who's well mannered, thoughtful, polite, functioning well in society, and that's where some of these skill sets come in, right? So things like balancing your checkbook, things like maintaining your car, maintaining your house, things like how to approach problems, Like even the idea of like a project, that's a skill set, right? Because what is the project you're going to do? How are you going to plan out that project? What are the tasks that need to be accomplished? What needs to occur first, second, third, kind of what's the pecking order? And in the past, I think when I was growing up, and I don't know what you guys experienced, but my stepdad was super influential in my life. And in addition, in my school, we had things like home ec. I took a home ec course to learn how to cook, right? I took, there's some sort of, I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the class would teach people how to do things on a daily basis, like how to live your life, how to look for jobs, how to write a resume, things that were very kind of mundane, but at the same time, very practical. And I think a lot of those things, shop classes, I remember having it's like a survey of shop, and you would do like 2 weeks in wood shop, 2 weeks in metal shop, 2 weeks welding, whatever it was. So you know a little bit about everything, but those things have since gone. And so there's really not that mechanism for my son to learn those things. And obviously I don't have maybe not obviously, but I don't have the welding equipment and things like that here to teach him some of those skills, just like to know. But anyway, I know I'm kind of talking a little bit long here, but at the same time, what are the things that are important to teach? How do I teach those? And I think I've done an okay job. I think I could have done a lot better at this than kind of my experience growing up. But the bottom line is we want people to learn these skill sets and want our children to learn these skill sets and to be able to accomplish things on their own. And it hasn't been easy. I'm still in the process. My son's 20 years old now. I'm still in the process of like trying to get him to learn some more of these things while I can. And, kind of while he's independent, but at the same time on the payroll, if you will. So it's Keith knows what I'm talking about. So it's kind of, we're working towards independence, and it's at this point it's prioritizing skill sets and trying to figure out what do I really need to make sure he understands.
Well, I know in our district, I'll look it up in a minute whenever somebody takes the floor here. We had, when I went to school, we had in high school, they were electives. In middle school, you actually had to take them. We had wood shop, like full. What's that, Doug?
No, I'm sorry, my kid.
Oh,
I should have muted it, but it didn't have time.
Doug, didn't you know that this show has nothing to do with kids? Come on, knock it off. What are you doing? Come on.
We'll call that a dad's on life moment.
We had, like I said, we had wood shop, we had mechanical drawing, we had sewing, we had home ec, we had a bunch of those. But one thing that they should, honestly, in school, they should teach things like that, like skills like that, like balancing checkbooks and things like that, how to live. And while that's a parent's responsibility, it could also be something that kids could use as a school course districts could use as a school course to help teach the kids as well. I have learned certain things from my father, and we'll be able to, easily teach the girls what to do. Right now, so far at 9 and 6, Sadie has actually taken up, I would say, more after her grandfather than anybody. Sadie is starting to become actually pretty good at cleaning and things like that. I mean, she in one day basically cleaned the entire kitchen, and I'm not kidding when I say clean the entire kitchen.
Can you send her over here, please?
It was quite interesting. I like Elise got up and she's like, "You're not going to believe this," and took a picture and sent me. And I'm like, "Who did that?" And she's like, "Sadie." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." So both girls actually do know how to use the the washing machine and dryer. Sadie can't get the stuff out of it because she's a little short. She's too short right now, but Delaney can. Delaney can reach in and get the stuff out. One day I was looking for something in the basement, and I knew they had come down. Because they came down right behind me, and I turn around and they're taking everything out and putting it in the dryer, and then reloading the washing machine. I'm like, whoa, okay.
I'm impressed they didn't put
Delaney-
themselves in the dryer.
What's that?
I'm impressed they didn't put themselves in the dryer with the clothes.
It's a front loader, it'd be impossible. They actually did it pretty well, and they do it pretty easily. Actually, they really know how to do it. And then a few weeks ago, and that's what Doug had originally, I think, brought this up in a conversation we had. And then within a week of that conversation, or maybe right before that, Delana turned around at me and said to me as the lawnmower was sitting there, "Daddy, how do you cut the lawn?" And it was, I didn't let her try to do it, but she knows how to turn it on. I don't know if she actually can, but that's something she's already asked for me to teach her how to do, which we'll wait till next year. I mean, she'll be 10. Not saying it's going to be a chore that she's going to pick up, but it's something that if she was curious enough to ask and want to know, yeah, show her. They don't take the can down, but they'll take the garbage can back in and the recycling back in and things like that. So far, they're like slowly little things here and there. They're taking it up pretty easily. So
9 and 6. I'm shocked they're not mowing the lawn. Just kidding.
Our neighbor actually does. He'll do it occasionally. He's is he 12? Maybe 13? He's in middle school, so yeah, something like that. But yeah, I honestly don't see a lot of kids at all out there doing it.
No.
So
they're very adept at playing video games, but they're not necessarily good at chores.
And they're not cutting the lawn in video games. So
And
I think it also-
there's also the underlying skills that Chad was talking about. They don't have that either. I'm sorry, Doug. I think I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just going to say that also. It also depends on the parents too, and what you're making your kids do. I mean, because like the kid that just came over now to play with Colin, he's 10 years old, and he cuts their. He's the grandson, and he cuts their lawn. I see him out there every week at least, constantly. And he goes with his grandfather, who owns a bunch of properties, and cuts all the lawns, all the different properties, lawns for, his grandfather. His grandfather's probably only like maybe 10 years older than me. So we're looking at like 56. So, but, it's just the drive of the grandparents that say, hey, this is what you're doing. This is what your life's like, get out there and do it. For me, it was more or less like Brendan had interest. So I showed him how to do it and all. And when he didn't have interest, it was like one of those things where I just let it fall and say, oh, well, he doesn't really have interest. My wife is like, well, you have to take that away from him. I just tell him he needs to go and do it, But I was able to actually have time with my grandfather, who a lot of my cousins and all didn't get to spend time with my grandfather. But we lived in a duplex, and they lived next door. So he taught me a lot about how to check the oil and when we had oil in the ground, and how to look at the furnace and check the instruments on the furnace, and how to check your car will start, and how to check the carburetor, what things to check for spark and all, because I had a bunch of older cars like a 79 Nova and stuff. Well, if your car doesn't start, this is what things you could do. And my dad as well showed me at a young age how to change the oil in my car and stuff. And he was an electrician, so he showed me how to set up a breaker box and how to run lines And when I was young, I remember going to my aunt's bar, and my dad replaced all electric in there, and I got to go and underneath the floorboards and like drill all the holes and run all the lines underneath the floors and all, because I was that small. So it was a good job for me, you know. And now here I am, and it's my chance to share these things with my son. And I'm not so great at it. I'm not the most handiest person in the world. I've just lucked out with having lots of neighbors and friends that are good at these things. So my go-to thing is my phone book. And can you come over? So just this week, I had to have one of my friends who's a maintenance guy and say, "Hey, can you take a look at my refrigerator? For some reason, it's like peeing water on my floor. And I can't figure it out, you know?" And my brother came up. I was just talking to Keith and put 2 new windows in. But I myself don't know how to replace windows at all. And I learned a great deal, but I didn't call Brendan in, and I probably should have made him watch from beginning to end, although my brother does curse a lot. Uh, but it was like a learning experience for myself, this weekend, just seeing how to put windows in, and all that goes into that because it's my house. So I should know. But it's things like that, and like you were saying, Chad, like things that you need for life lessons, like growing older, checkbook balancing and stuff, how to do your taxes and all those are all important things. And like Jason mentioned with the laundry, like, my mom and stuff at one point went back to work and stuff. I mean, my brother learned, quite fast, how you do laundry, how do you make dinner, and little basic things like that. And it's nice that Brendan, at least, I don't have to worry about him like going to college and just making hot dogs, because the boy can cook some fish. I'll tell you that.
Good. That's good stuff. But like you were saying too, Doug, it's like some of it, when I was growing up, I had to mow the lawn. I was probably 11, 12 years old, and I had a 2-acre lawn to mow with over 100 trees to trim around. It was a nightmare. I mean, every Saturday, that's what I would do. I'd have to get up, and my parents just be like, "It's got to be done today. If it's not raining, you have to do it." And it's the same when my dad had the farm with my uncle. I was down there, young kid, flipping bales of hay up. That's hard work, man, for a kid. And but that was just part. I didn't have it as bad as my cousins who lived there full time, but it's just some of that's like teaching responsibility, and some of that puts in the drive as well about, I don't want to bale hay all my life. I want to do something. I don't want to be a farmer. I want to do something else.
Right. One other thing that I want to add that Jason touched on, with I went to school in the same area as Jason, so I also had all those different technical classes and all that they afforded to us, and from auto mechanics to mechanical drawing. But around here, they do a pretty good job of taking kids around to like farms and seeing like a lot of the things around this area, which is very important, is, farming and growing. And I wish they would actually expand it more to, how important it is, and jobs that are still available in this area that, whether it's farming and or like, like dairy life is very big around here and stuff, that keeping those jobs, and the importance of them, and how it is that if, you don't want to go to college and stuff, that these are still viable jobs in this area.
Right.
Listening to all you guys, and I'm thinking to myself, I want to say I suck as a parent, but I'm told I don't.
Yeah.
I've done it very, very differently. So it's important to stress that there's no right or wrong by a long shot.
Right.
But, when we were joking, you want to learn how to change your oil? Yeah, Jiffy Lube down the street. You want to learn how to cook breakfast or cook a meal? The microwave is right over there. I haven't taught any of that stuff. Although I will say that particularly my older son, but both of them to a certain extent, have familiarized themselves with kitchens and can sort of fake their way through some stuff. I didn't do a damn thing. They did it themselves. And of course, it helps that they had girlfriends. I tried to be a bad influence on them. Go out, meet girls, date around, have a good time. And they both wound up doing exactly what I did. And when I was in high school, I dated the same girl for 3 years. And when they were in high school, they both dated the same girl for 3 years. Not the same girl together, but they each
Oh,
had a
boy.
girlfriend that they're still seeing. And now it's over 4 years for both of them. So they sort of like, I don't think they did it intentionally or to mimic me, but in a way they replicated who I am and the experience that I taught them about what I did when I was in high school in that topic. But I'm told I have a different skill set than most people, and that is I'm very extroverted. So one of the things that I think you guys know I do is I run a networking organization for my profession, which is human resources. And when they were very young, in fact, when they were exactly Jason's daughter's ages, they went to their first networking event. And back in those days, everyone at the event would get up and do their 30-second elevator pitch and introduce themselves. And I taught them at the ages of 9 and 6 how to get up in front of a large group of people and do exactly that. So
Right.
they have a very different skill set that allows them to be much more open and interactive with people, to the point where they wound up both running for class president, vice president, stuff like that. And they would do campaign speeches and they would wow audiences because they knew how to publicly speak way before any of their peers did. Did that help them win elections, by the way? No, they didn't ever win the elections because they weren't the cool kids, but they were much better speakers than their opponents. It just that's all stuff is preordained stuff. So the skill sets I taught were more the soft skills, the how to be more open and talking and not necessarily the extrovert stuff, not the introvert stuff, if you will.
Yeah, my wife is always.
Say that again, Doug?
Oh no, my wife is always carrying on that I need to be more open with my kids. She's like, you're such a nice gentleman. She's like, and you need to keep on your kids and explain that to them. And I'm always like, well, I show by example. And she's like, yeah, but sometimes you need to talk to them too.
Well, I find it very interesting because I think we do the most teaching just by living our lives. And we don't realize that by doing that, we're teaching because we're role models. They're always watching. They're always paying attention, even if we have no clue that they're paying attention. And I can't tell you, I mean, many, many times, one or the other of them has come back to me and told me that they do certain things because they simply watched me do it.
Right.
They knew that they were imitating me and it became something that they were very comfortable with. I was just in South Carolina 2 weeks ago, I think, visiting Justin, and he was kind of eager in a way to take me. He shares a 4-bedroom apartment with 3 guys, and he's kind of Oscar in the Felix and Oscar kind of situation. He really doesn't know how to put things away or organize anything. His room looks like it got hit by a nuclear bomb and all that. Kind of eager this past time 2 weeks ago at the age of 21. He wanted to show me his room and how it was much more organized now. And he walked me through the whole room and how I do this because you taught me how to do that. And I do this because mom did this and I never wanted to do it that way. He was using her as the antithesis of what he wanted to do. And a lot of the stuff that I never thought he was paying attention to, he not only had picked up over time, but he was eager to, he knew he did it because he watched, and he was eager to show me how it was finally starting to click, if you will. Albeit, he's already 21. You figured by now he would have gotten it, but better late than never, if you will.
But it's funny because one of my buddies who has a son who's probably in his late 20s now, we talk about, like I kind of bounce things off of him every once in a while. And he's like, every year, he says, you just hope they can pick up a couple more things. He says, and eventually by the time we die, they're going to be good. They're going to have it all figured out. But
well, I think it's going to take until they're 40 to figure out the stuff that I've actually told them when they were, in their teens.
Yeah, exactly. But to your point too, about the public speaking and stuff like that, that's a great skill. And that's something I've tried to work with Frankie on and just being outgoing, because both of us, I was a shy kid growing up. And so it took me a little bit to come out of my shell and I had to force myself out. And once I got out, I'm okay. And that's kind of where he was as well. Very shy, very reserved. I'm like, you gotta force yourself out. You gotta make yourself say hello to people. You gotta make yourself reach out your hand and engage in a conversation. It's not easy stuff to do for somebody who's shy, you know. I mean, some people just kind of do it naturally, but if that's not your natural state, then it's a little bit more difficult, right? But super important skills.
I was the same way. I was a shy person. Still have my moments too sometimes. But I was an intern at a radio station, which was funny. It was a rock station down the shore, and they sent me and another guy, and the other guy had some speech issues. Up to, at the time, this is how long ago this was. The Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band had just gotten back together and did a run of 13 shows at the then Continental Airlines Arena, I believe. They had done the Greatest Hits album, which they did 4 new songs for, and then 5 years later, finally decided to do some shows. This was '99, and they sent me and this other guy up there, and we had to do a giveaway. And I'm like, I was like, he ain't gonna do it. So, 20-year-old me, who was the usual shy person, grabbed the mic and I opened the door and climbed up on top of the truck and on top of the van. And I'm standing literally in a sea of probably a couple hundred people. And there I am standing on top of the truck and I'm going, what the fuck am I going to do now? And I don't even remember. I just blinked at the first 2 words and got out what I had to do and was throwing stuff off the top of the van. And then I climbed down and he looked at me and went, that was pretty good. And I went, what the hell did I just do? I was like, what did I do? I literally looked at him. I basically completely blanked out. Don't even remember exactly what I did, but completely blanked out and just did it. And ever since then, it's been, that was the door that opened for me. And then after that, I went into college radio I attacked college radio and actually ended up running the station for a while and then went full time into radio as a producer and co-host at a radio station. And so public speaking after that moment became something that was quick, easy, and it wasn't a big deal for me. Now it's not an issue at all. 20 years later, but yeah, that's something that is going to be easy for me to teach. That's something that I'm going to be the one who's going to have to handle that because I don't really know how Elise is at public speaking, but I know for me it's become second nature pretty easily. So, and I mean, I do still have that moment even now where I will, if I stand in front of a crowd, I kind of have to go, ooh, there's people looking at me. It takes that 1 second or a couple of seconds of, oh, shit, I really got to do this. Yeah, so I completely understand that. Public speaking is one skill set. And I will say there are a lot of people in this country that don't have that skill.
Especially amongst
haven't mastered that skill. So
Yeah, I would say I've been pretty shy and also someone that will not if what I need or what I'm going to ask you is going to be an imposition, then I won't. I rather take the long road round, do things like totally insane things just because I won't ask for help and stuff. And that's another skill is just being able to ask for help and know when you need help. And My kids, Brendan, we've already had some issues with it. He's very, also, it turns out that the same where when it comes to public asking or things to fight for himself, he won't. He just rather, shy away and not take it on because he doesn't want to imposition or feels out of character to do that. Um, the other thing that I was going to say that to add to totally different than this is also my dad was like a big spiritual leader, and that's what I got from him, and I hopefully, and I could be that for my kids too. Although my wife is the bigger spiritual leader right now, but yeah, always seeing my dad praying, reading his Bible, and just being just somebody with great morals and responsible and great character that a lot of people in our neighborhood really looked up to my dad for those things. And I hope a lot of that, shows through me and onto my kids.
Interesting. I talked a lot about what I do and how it is replicated by my kids. What I didn't talk about is where it came from. And thank you for inspiring me to harken back to that. I grew up in a household where my father was the leader of one of the major parties, one of the major political parties for not only the township, but he was very influential county and statewide. I mean, we would host mega parties with like 100 people, mostly politicians, in our house several times a year. We would have senators, House of Representatives, people like that in our house.
Wow.
And
Great.
so from the time I was like 3 or 4 years old, they taught me like open the door, introduce yourself to the person who's walking through the door. I had no idea who I was talking to.
Right.
I didn't learn until years later who these people were. The one that had the most impact for me was a guy named Jim Howard, who 195 is named after this guy. I didn't know that there were all these powerful and influential people in the house, but it taught me how to be much more well-spoken. I didn't have a choice about, speaking articulately, whatever the word is. I didn't have a choice about articulating well. My father spoke 6 languages fluently, and my mother could have been an English professor at the university level. I mean, they both were exacting, and every word that came out of my mouth had to be precise. They never let me make a mistake without pointing it out. So I became extremely adept at the language. And this in turn became something that I would pass on to my sons, not the same way, although we did have big parties here, just not with famous people or, influential people.
Right.
I would send them to the door and they would answer doors for me. And when they were literally 3 years old, 4 years old, I would have them do it just to make sure that they were familiar with, saying hi to people. And it's funny because when I did that, I wasn't even remembering that I had done that as a child. It took years later that memory sort of came back, how I was raised.
Right.
But I always had to be proper and well-spoken and all that, when I was very young. So this stuff comes around, just like Doug says, you're trying to almost replicate what your father did, and you put your own nuances on it and all that sort of thing, but you are how you're raised.
I do actually have an answer about the question about what we were talking about earlier about woodworking and things like that. Wood shop in one of our local middle schools, which I'm sure it's in both. We actually do have stuff like that still here in Old Bridge. They've taken away, oddly, cooking and sewing, but still have wood shop at least. I'm sure there's other things like mechanical drawing and things like that as well. Maybe, I don't know if print shop and things like that, because I know we actually had something where we made our own business cards and our own stamps and things like that. I don't know if those still exist or not, but in fact, I actually probably have a box or two somewhere where I actually still have the stamp and the business cards in the at my parents' house somewhere. But yeah, my niece Maeve actually has wood shop right now, so that's kind of an answer to that question we had earlier.
And that really surprised me because it seemed, sorry to step on you there, Jason, but that really surprised me too, because so many schools had that cut in addition to things like art classes, which I'm not an artist, but I enjoy a little bit. And I've got some friends who are pretty hardcore. I mean, that's what they do for a living, is they're artists, right? But some of that's been cut as well. And it's always nice to understand what's going on with art and just different types of art as well. But, so it's interesting what's going on educationally, but, I would say that the great majority of things that I've learned were in the home, from my mother, with regard to laundry and cooking, and from my stepdad, especially with regard to kind of practical things. But one of the things that I would like to also talk about is two of the big things he taught me. They're kind of like grander principles. It's not necessarily task oriented, are problem solving, how to solve problems. And I've made my career based on problem solving. If you have a problem, I can come up with 50 solutions to it. Right. I mean, I've really done well with that. And that's one of the things that he taught me, but it wasn't taught on the grand scale. It was more taught on specifically how to take care of certain things, right? If you have a problem come up, a small problem, but now I can apply that to the big picture as well. And the other thing is personal responsibility. And that's what I've tried to influence Frankie with, is taking personal responsibility. So if he's having a tough time in a class, he'll be like, well, that teacher, I just don't like that teacher. That teacher does blah, blah, blah. Well, son, you're going to have people in life who do that. And you need to figure out what their hoops are and how to jump through those, because you need the grade in this class. You need to figure out how to learn something in the class. So take it off of them and put it on you. How do you solve that problem? You have to be the one responsible for it.
Frankie's a little ahead of the curve here, because I've tried doing that with Justin and Jeremy. And I'll talk about how when you go to college, when this was in high school, when you go to college, you're running this, more professors are going to be just as much a jackass as this teacher is trying to be to you, and you're going to have to figure out how to solve the problem, and then it'll happen in the work environment. Yeah. I can see the looks in their eyes now, because they're both in college. You can see what they're thinking. They know I was right. They don't want to admit it yet.
Yeah.
But it did help them prepare for it, but they haven't acknowledged it yet. Yeah. We're at that stage.
Yeah, they're in the process of internalizing it now, going, maybe the problem isn't them, maybe the problem's me and my understanding of the environment and how to.
I think they still think that the problem is the teachers, but now they have a better idea that it's not just that one teacher who had it in for them. Now it's sort of like a common thing, and it's not about having it in for them. It's more, that's how people behave. So how do you circumvent it? What are your solutions? Yeah. They're getting more of a worldly view now. It's not just, when you're in high school, you think your teacher just hates you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I've tried to teach Frankie, is I'm like, life is a bunch of hoops, and you have to figure out how to jump through those hoops. And if you're successful in life, it's because you've been able to jump through those hoops. Right.
Right. I had and I'll bring this up. I had a small little thing happen this week. It's so silly, but there would have been a bit of a different reaction from myself a few months ago. But I actually was I had to go to work to do some. I was going to work, and I needed to bring a check to work with me. And of course, to do a seat for a delivery of potatoes that we were getting, of potatoes and carrots. And of course, I got all the way up to work in Elizabeth and forgot the check on the kitchen table. This was Thursday. So usually a couple of months ago, it would have been a different reaction. The reaction was, oh shit. Told my coworker to take over my job for a little bit. Our plant manager tell him to take over, do what I would have had to do for a few minutes, so I can go back and get the check and pray that the driver hadn't come yet by the time I got back. Well, half an hour later, I got back here, got back to Old Bridge, got the check, got back in the car, and got back to Elizabeth. And 3 hours later, the delivery finally showed up. So I mean, it was something that you just got to suck it up and deal with it, and not get used to not making a mountain out of a molehill. So that's something that I was pretty good at for a while, and for other reasons. But things are a little bit different now, so that's something that has changed in my skill set of how to problem solve and how to deal with things. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Problem solving is a big one, and it's going to be a big one on this planet going forward, especially for the next generation.
I want to guide this for a second here.
Oh boy.
I want to ask a question that I think we should all respond to. What is the skill set that you did not teach your kids that you wish you had?
The skill set you wish you
had taught them, that you did not teach them.
Chad, you want to start this one? No, because he's the one who, the other one in the show right now, who his son is older. So, but I would give you a caveat to that, Chad. You have a stepson, right?
No, he's my son. Well, I got a stepson now who's 2.
So you, for all intent and purposes,
starting over.
Get another chance would have
Yep.
been my thought. So take it away, sir.
Okay. So I think for mine, as I reflect back on the personal responsibility that I had just mentioned and how we talk about it, I think it would have been a much more effective lesson to have actually put him into more situations where he had personal responsibility. So for example, my exposure to personal responsibility, my parents helped me buy my first car. And after that, I was responsible. If it broke down, I had to pay for repairs. If I needed to do maintenance, I had to pay for any maintenance on it. I had to pay for my license, my insurance, everything. Now, my son, Frankie, I talk about responsibility and how eventually he's going to have this that he's going to have to take on, but we haven't actually applied it as much. He knows now, like I just bought him a new car, or a different car, I should say, over the summer, and we had to go in, and I made him go in and talk to our insurance guy. And I'm real close with our insurance guy. I like doing business face to face, and it's real personal and everything. So it's real nice to just go in there and kind of sit back and let my insurance guy talk to him about the information that he's going to need and how that's going to relate to his premium and stuff. But at the same time, I'm writing the check for it. He's not writing the check. So he doesn't understand some of the stuff as directly or as intimately as he could if I would have been a little more upfront and push a little more personal responsibility on him. You know, I mean, his personal responsibility is making sure he's got his gear ready for sports and those kinds of things, make sure everything's organized. But as far as the bigger question, that's one place where I would have done a little different job, and I probably will do things differently with the next opportunity I have. So that, I guess, does that answer the question? I even though it's like I tried to teach, I think the lesson could have been taught more effectively.
I would imagine that we would all say that about everything we've taught. We can't perfectly do anything. So no matter how good we do it, there's probably better ways or additional things we could do and all that sort of thing. The answer to your question is yes. As good an answer as any, because there's no right or wrong.
Well, and let me add this too. I think when I was growing up, for me, we didn't have a lot of money. So it's either I paid for the stuff or I didn't have the stuff. And now that, things have improved, and my parents helped me to improve in terms of my earning potential, in terms of what the things that I have. So I don't necessarily want to make my kids struggle like I had to. And I think that's what a lot of parents do at this point is things are much easier for us now than they were for our parents or for our grandparents. So we try to pass along some of those advantages to our children, and sometimes that can be a detriment to what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Doug?
Oh, I was going to just say, I can't necessarily say a single thing that I would fault, except that, like I was saying, is just I need to include my kids more in what I do. Stop being so self-enclosed. I get very, I don't know, anxious, annoyed easily, and I just like, well, I'll just do this, type thing around the house. And I think that, like, if I ask the kids once and I'm like, hey, Brendan, you want to come down and do this or something, or this is what I'm going to do, and he's like, well, I'm playing a game right now or something, and I'm just like, I say, oh, well, he's not interested. I just go about it and do these things. Like the other day, the pipe broke on the water heater, and turning off the water idea and being able to shut that off and changing the pipe myself and all. It could have been a life lesson, but it was like one of those things where I was just so frustrated and annoyed that I just was like, I got to do this. I got to go to Home Depot, and I took care of it. But, these are things that I need to distress and like think these things happen all the time. And, I could include, at least Brendan in doing things like that. And it happens quite often when you own a house. There's lots of things that, are life lessons. And I don't want to bring it down to that owning a home or anything like that really has anything to do with it. But just for my own personal goal should be to, involve my children more and let them actually be partaking or viewing more of the things that I do, other than letting them just be to their own devices of, playing video games and ignoring and watching TV when, maybe we should be more of a family unit on some things.
Yeah, but they don't want to come away from their video games, so I'm not sure you have much of a choice there. I know I certainly had a lot of struggle, and I continue to kind of rib them because I think that they spend wild amounts of time on video games. They probably don't spend as much as I whine about, but I think that I would have loved to have seen my kids be out there more, doing more things with me or without me, whatever. But just, I have a real hang up about spending a lot of time on electronic devices. I know that makes me sound really old, but like most people, I grew up, outside playing baseball and running the neighborhood and physically outside and not in front of a screen.
Right.
Very hard to adjust to letting, watching and to a certain extent letting my kids do it, but they're both adults now, so it's hard for me to bitch about it now. But when they weren't adults, I definitely should have whined more and intervened more and had them do more things with me. I also, like you, Doug, I have sort of trouble putting my finger on anything in particular that is like a specific skill set, because I'm so devoid of them myself. I don't. I in the past I used to know how to change oil in a car, but I found it to be so ridiculously labor intensive that it was just easy to go to Jiffy Lube and be done with it. So that's the thing I taught them. I'm not mechanically inclined, so they don't know anything about cars. I don't know anything about cars. They don't know anything about cars. Boy, it'd be nice to do that. For me, the one thing that surprised me and I was taken off guard by is I always thought I would have until they went to college. Some life skills like doing their laundry and basic little cooking stuff and what have you. Now, I've never thought I was going to teach them a lot because I don't do a lot, but just basic skills. And then they both got the bug to do drum corps. where they travel in the summer times. And Justin started that when he was a sophomore in high school. So I didn't take advantage of the earlier time well, thinking I could stall and get around to it. I would do it before they went to college. And with them gone every summer, it's, and they're more focused on schoolwork during the school year while they were here in high school. It was a little tough to teach them the skills that I probably should have. And I didn't allocate time as well as I should have. I probably used excuses.
Right.
It was easier for me to take them to baseball games and hang out and have fun than it was to teach them like real life skills. So I needed to less lazy. We'll put it that way. It wasn't that I didn't spend time with them. It's that I didn't. We had maybe too much fun instead of doing things that would have, balancing checkbooks and things like that. Who the hell balances a checkbook anymore? I don't know.
Well, and to add on to that, Keith, to your point, that time goes fast. This really is a lesson that I think that we have to offer to Doug and Jason. That time goes fast.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they're through high school. Once they get to high school, they start living their own lives at some level, right? So they're staying at a friend's house, then they start driving, and then they're gone all the time or a lot of the time, and they're doing their own thing. And one of the things that I really missed, and I didn't think I would miss it because I spent a lot of time going from here to the school and back on, dropping off and picking up at practices and going to games and things like that. And that wasn't a lot of time every day in the car. But once he started driving and I didn't have that time with him, that added up. That was a big chunk of time that we had together in the car to talk and to visit and to figure out what was going on. So don't take those times for granted when you're driving them to and from things. Those are very important times from my perspective. Those are very important times to spend with your children. And also that the time that you have with them where they're going to be attentive to you, where you're kind of the cool dad, that goes away pretty quickly because they start doing their own thing. And then they get into their own lives, right?
Mhm.
And then I think they come around and they, as Keith was saying, they understand that the dad and mom had some good viable contributions, but it takes a little while to get there. So that time goes fast. Enjoy it and use it.
By 7th and 8th grade, they're so involved in so many different activities usually that you're just a taxi.
Right.
Exactly.
You're not necessarily mom or dad. You're just a taxi.
Yep.
And there's not time other than in the car, like he says, to kind of impress some stuff on them. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it, Chad. You're absolutely right.
Right. I know for me right now, I mean, at 9 and 6, they're just starting to for that to be a time to start doing things. I mean, I'm glad they kind of have figured out the laundry and things like that. And I mean, my intent would be start with cooking, pretty much like really cooking and really showing them shortly how to do things like that. My mother, hopefully soon when she recovers fully and is able to get back to doing things like that, might be able to teach them how to sew and things like that. I don't know how to do that, but my mother does. There's a bunch of things that it, at least like you said, I'm just starting for it at this point. So, and I'm not going to let any time go by, but the one thing that I definitely one thing that I would like to really teach them and hope that it sinks in is something that isn't a skill set. It's more a mentality. It's something that they hopefully will understand very early here, and that is progress, not perfection. What I mean is clearly understanding that you're not going to be perfect. Not everything in life is going to go your way, and you're not going to be able to do everything with perfection. Perfection is a myth. No one is perfect. No one does anything perfect all the time. Absolutely, categorically a myth. You can't. You're not perfect. No one is. What you are is you're able to, but if you can progress towards doing the best you can, it's a better way to be. Because to be perfect and strive for perfection all the time, no, you're going to drive yourself to situations that aren't going to be good for you and healthy for your mentality. It's just not going to happen. And I know that you're not going to be able to, you can't achieve perfection. You won't be able to, nothing's going to be absolutely perfect in your life. And I mean, while the mentality of, oh, that's good enough. No. Okay. Don't give up either. Do it the best you can. Every time you can. But yeah, like I said, perfection, progress, not perfection, is something that hopefully people in this generation will get a better grasp of in life than we did.
Absolutely.
Well put, Jason. Yeah, I think you just put a nice cap on it. Good job.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? Anybody else have anything to add here? We're getting close. We've gotten to this hour much faster than I thought we were going to. Anybody else have anything they want to add on the way out?
Here's one quick close, and I think it's good news from my perspective, and that's, I've had some time. I guess it was my son's senior year, and I was gone for about 2 weeks, and so he stayed at my house for the most part. He told his mom he had to take care of his dog. Right, what an excuse to go over and spend time alone at his dad's house, enjoying it. So I'm wondering what's going on at my house, and we have some ground rules about what goes on. And I come back after 2 weeks expecting the place to be in shambles, dirty dishes everywhere, garbage bags piled up, the whole 9 yards, stinky laundry ready to be washed, all this kind of stuff. I came back and the place was immaculate. And I said, Frank, I said, what's this about? I said, did you have somebody come over and clean this, or what happened? He goes, no, Dad. He said, you taught me how to do all this stuff. He says, but you're usually there to do it. And if you're there to do it, he says, I'm lazy. But if you're not there to do it, he says, I'll do it myself. So I'm like, thank God. I'm like, something's the kid's learning something. And that was where the rubber met the road. So it was a good experience for me. And hopefully you guys all have had experience, and we'll have experiences like that as well. When you think, maybe, is this all for naught? And then you find out, no, it's not. It's actually taking.
Right.
I think we have the same son, and I say that because Justin has his own off-campus apartment down in South Carolina that he shares with 3 other guys, and they each have their own bedroom. And he had the option of being completely online this semester. He has 1 class out of 5 that's in person, but he could have made that an online class and done the whole thing remotely, in which case he could have been here instead of down in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. But he opted to be there and not even come home the entire semester. And his reason for doing that was that he feels he's much more organized when he's responsible for doing his own dishes, doing his own laundry, and scheduling his own day. And he said flat out, when he's here, I take care of that stuff for him.
Yep.
I do the laundry, I do the dishes, and he doesn't have that, those things sort of root him in his schedule, so that he gets more things done when he's doing it himself. And that's why he's in South Carolina and not in New Jersey.
Yep.
He knows he's welcome here. He would enjoy being here, but he thinks it would actually hurt his studies because he wouldn't be. So he had to go. But it sounds like very much like what you just said. It's very interesting.
Yep, absolutely. It's a good feeling too for me. I'm sure it is for you too.
Yes. Well, I still, the idea of him being in the state of South Carolina, which isn't exactly as compliant handling the pandemic, not to get back to that topic, but they're certainly much more lax about it, and much more risk in being in a state like South Carolina than there is in New Jersey. So it makes me feel great that he feels that way and that he's independent and all that kind of backfired on me because now he's spending the semester in South Carolina and not in a safer place like New Jersey. But I trust him to take care of himself, so I think he'll be fine.
Mhm.
Well, I just wanted to say, somebody asked me yesterday, actually, last night, what is the purpose of the whole podcast thing? And I went through a bunch of things, and this I chalk up to, for myself, one of those like self help ones where, I just realized a bunch of things that I could probably do better, and I'm going to strive to. And, that was like one of those things like last night they asked, and after talking about things today, where I wanted to go, and had something else, but will come back to me after the show, I'm sure. So,
Hey, listen, we're each other's counselors. We're all taking notes on each other to, sort of let ourselves air it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly what. The more we do this, the more I realize that that's exactly pretty much what we are doing this for. It's kind of a therapy session every week for us. Yeah, pretty much. I'm glad that I have the time to be able to build skill sets with the girls at the moment, and I know it's going to take a while and it's going to take a lot of time, but time takes time. So it's going to take me a while to build everything and build things, but slowly, surely, hopefully, Elise and I will be able to build them up enough of a base to build of a good foundation to build a good life on for themselves. And that's pretty much all I can hope for.
That's parenting, sir.
I think that pretty much brings us to a conclusion for this week in this topic. Glad we were able to start the process of moving on from what is going on. And as I said earlier, to begin with, we look forward to change and a better, brighter future for this country and for our children. Onward and upward, as they say. So from all of us here at Dad's on Life, take care, everybody.
Have a good one.